Good afternoon, Ambassador.
Good afternoon.
How are you doing?
Excellent, thank you.
Can the listener get to know you, your name, what you do, where you were born, family, and educational background?
Well, my name is Tom Amolo. I'm Kenya's High Commissioner to the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And I was born 52 years ago in Nairobi, Kenya. I've been in Nigeria since October 2013. I mean, not October, March 2013, when I transferred here from South Africa, where I was an ambassador for the previous 5 years. So I went to school in Kenya, and all my education was in Kenya, with stints, periodic stints outside the country, in Germany and the United States. So I'm a career diplomat, and this is one of the most interesting engagements I have had as a diplomat in my 30 plus years in diplomacy.
Yeah. Why do you say so? Why do you say this is one of the most?
Because it's one which has created the most opportunities and the most the ability to make a huge difference in a way that the other postings could not. Why is that? Because the Nigeria is the largest country in the continent in terms of size, economy, and they have the wherewithal as Nigerians to manage their own affairs. They're very entrepreneurial people, and with that, huge resources in mining, in agriculture, in oil and gas. And there's an opportunity for Kenyans, especially because I represent Kenya, to see this as a place where you can broaden your economic space, so to speak, and obtain opportunities for employment, for your manufacturing capacity, for agriculture, and so on.
So, going back to your earlier statements, when did your diplomatic career begin, and why did you decide to be a career diplomat?
It's a very interesting question. When I was going to school in the early years as a young man, secondary school as a matter of fact, the world at that time was in the throes, the Middle East was in the throes of conflict, in many ways similar to what it is today. And I was intrigued with the way in which at that time people like Henry Kissinger were constantly in the news trying to manage the affairs to bring peace to that troubled part of the world. And I thought to myself, if I ever was to do something that I loved, was to try and bring amity, peace and tranquility to places where there are difficulties. That was just a childhood, not childhood, but a teenage sort of desire. And as the years went on, it became a passion, and that is why eventually, when I went to university at the age of 17, I decided to take a career, or to pursue a career in diplomacy. So when I graduated out of University of Nairobi in 1983, I thought I was given first dibs into the training program at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Kenya, and that has been my career. So it started out of a youthful desire to be involved in managing the challenges that existed in the world and trying to bring amity, peace and tranquility.
So how has the journey been so far?
It's been a very interesting journey. I mean, I've had the honor of serving my country in New York in the 90s, in the 80s, and then in Washington in the 80s, in the United Nations Security Council in the 90s, 1997 as a matter of fact, for 2 years, and then South Africa. So the journey has been a very long and interesting one. And I tell you, working the United Nations, when we're in the Security Council, It is like being in a graduate school of international affairs. It's a top-notch, and the decisions, the discussions you have about the world constantly make you realize that we human beings have to constantly talk to each other to bridge the gaps that exist in the way we see the world, and that the only way to resolve issues is not by fighting each other, but by talking to each other. So the journey has been a very, very rewarding one, if I can use that word. And as we in the continent of Africa, as our government, the Kenyan government, puts in place its strategy for dealing with the challenges of the world, Africa is at the core. President Uhuru Kenyatta has said several times that the core of our diplomacy, the core of our engagement with the rest of the world begins with Africa. Of course, we have interactions with the rest of the world, but Africa is our core. And that is why he has been in Nigeria 2 times on an official basis and has had several interactions with his brother president and with other leaders of Nigeria. So it's been rewarding. Yeah.
Who are some of the most outstanding diplomats you've met? Since you said you were more or less at the School of Diplomacy, that's the UN, in the 80s and 90s.
Well, personally, to begin with our own home, Kenya, my personal favorite was Munyo Ayaki and Robert Ouko. Munyo Ayaki famously said that Kenya would have no relations with apartheid South Africa, and if so, it would be done over his dead body. Robert Ouko, because of blessed memory, he died under very difficult circumstances because he was able to articulate what our thinking about the rest of the world was in very clear and absorbable terms at a time when we were being challenged a lot internationally for human rights challenges. Then, of course, internationally, one of my personal favorites was Colin Powell, who I met with in the company of the former Foreign Minister George Setoti, who was briefly, Vice President George Setoti of blessed memory again, and so on and so forth. So it's been a Kofi Annan, who was a UN Secretary General when I was working at the UN, an African diplomat of great integrity, knowledge, and intelligence. So these are some of the people who, in the course of my life in diplomacy, I've interacted and looked up to. And I would hope that as the years move on, that what I've been trying to do, mentoring young and upcoming diplomats, will also help them in enhancing their careers. Yeah.
Thank you very much, sir. Sir, do inform us and listeners a bit about Kenya, people, culture, and anything worthy of note.
Well, first of all, Kenya is a beautiful country with a diverse flora and fauna. We have some of the best beaches on earth. We have very beautiful in the beach in Kenya. We have white sands and we have a coral reef. So when the tide is low, you can walk almost a kilometer out. And what that means is that it's very safe, no sharks. It's also very warm. The water is warm. There's a diverse engagement one can have with the wildlife of Kenya. we uphold that Kenya's wildlife heritage is a common heritage of mankind, and we want to preserve it for the benefit of all of mankind. And that is why we have been in the forefront of fighting to protect the elephant, so that the poaching that exists, that has slaughtered many elephants, which we believe, again, is a common heritage of mankind, will be brought to zero level. So from the mountains of the highlands of Kenya to the lowlands or the savannas, or where Masai Mara is, to the beaches of the coast of Kenya, it's a beautiful country. And because of that, we encourage the world to come and visit us. Very importantly, we encourage Nigeria to come and visit us, because we believe that only when we have an interaction across the continent between our peoples that can enhance our relationships and set the foundation for business. So if I was to summarize, I would say that Kenya is a place where one would want to visit to imbibe some of the culture, the beauty of the countryside, the beauty of our wildlife, and the warm personalities of our 42 plus ethnic communities. That is how I put it. Yeah.
Thank you very much for that detailed response. So, as an East African and a seasoned diplomat of over 3 decades, right? Do give the listener an holistic overview of your perspective of Nigeria, or perception of Nigeria, politically, economically, culture-wise, and also diplomatically.
Nigeria is a behemoth. Nigeria is a powerhouse. Nigeria is the largest country in the continent, the biggest economy. And Nigeria has always been in the forefront of African diplomacy, from the struggles against apartheid to the incarnation of the creation of ECOWAS, to the quelling of challenges in Sierra Leone. So that is how we look at Nigeria. I also think that, I also know that Nigerians are the most entrepreneurial people, and that when there are challenges in Nigeria, there are challenges for Africa. A peaceful Nigeria means a calm continent. If Nigeria has difficulties of a nature that it finds difficult to resolve, then we have to be worried. And that is why the challenges of terrorism should be seen in the context of an existential threat to all of our existence in Africa. And we cannot separate the challenges of Boko Haram in Nigeria and the challenges of Al-Shabaab in East Africa. And we should take up this fight in a way that we do not back off. The terrorism cannot make us cringe and hide in our cocoons, that we should be out there fighting it. So Nigeria's place is intact as a powerhouse, as a leader in the continent, and it is incumbent on Nigeria to constantly take up the cudgels and not to withdraw into its cocoon and say our problems are so many at home, we cannot have a face and a presence abroad. Because a Nigeria which cringes means the African continent has lost one of its most powerful voices, and we need Nigeria's voice on the international stage at all times, because when our voices are collective and are together with Nigeria's, then the whole world listens to us. If Nigeria's voice is removed from the equation, and then our voices are muted. So the pedigree that Nigeria has brought to international relations for a long time is a pedigree that it needs to nurture, it needs to be brought up to a level which can help not only Nigeria itself and the Western African subcontinent, but the whole continent to be able to move forward. The challenges the world faces now, not only in Africa, but in Iraq and so on, are challenges we should not reject as challenges not happening in the continent. Therefore, we have nothing to do with them. We also need our voice to come to bear on the challenges that take place in Middle East, in Europe, and so on. And we cannot do that if the voice of Nigeria is muted or is so focused on its own internal challenges that it cannot look outside.
So, back to Kenya. Kenya is synonymous with the Mau Mau uprisings of, if I'm right, the 50s or so. What really happened during that period?
Well, I put it very simply. The human spirit insists on freedom. And after decades of oppression from British colonialism and expropriation of land, our ancestral land from British colonialism, the people of Kenya, then in the central part of the country, where expropriation of land was at its highest, decided that no, we cannot take any more of this, and started pushing against British oppression. And that was the Mau Mau rebellion. And that is what essentially has motivated, it was a foundation of the peaceful independence struggle. The peaceful independence struggle was underpinned by the agitation of the Mau Mau for liberation, to be able to stand on our own feet and determine our own destiny. That has really informed, as the years have moved on, how we look at the world, that people have to be free, find expression for their own interests, and they can forge a way forward in a way that cannot be restricted by anybody. So that's how we see the Mau Mau as a foundation for our struggle for independence.
Okay. In late 2008, early 2009, there were electoral protests and violence in Kenya. So what really happened, and have political quibbles, disagreements back then been resolved?
Yes.
They have been resolved.
I'm sorry, you're asking if?
If what really happened during that period, the political violence in a peaceful Kenya,
okay,
and have political disagreements been resolved?
And this is why it is so important that we Africans build a firm foundation of democratic structures, of institutions that can first manage elections, and that their inbuilt systems of dispute resolution, and that the way to address challenges is not by throwing stones or by causing violence, but by sitting or having an institution manage it. Now, at the time when this challenge occurred, our constitution had not been changed. The institutions were weak. There was no vent to those who had a different view about the outcome of elections. And that is why, hardly 5 years ago, we promulgated a new constitution under President Kibaki. Now, apart from the constitutions, a raft of new institutions that were created, an independent electoral and boundaries commission. We had we have a brand new judiciary, so that anybody who had a dispute around an election could go to the judiciary and have it resolved within a very, very finite period of time. In the past, any electoral challenge in a court of law would go 5 years. So by the time the next general election would be coming, the old cases were still in court. But the new constitution has been able to change all of that. That if there is a challenge during an election at the highest level, the presidential level, the constitution says it has to be resolved within a specific period. And this happened actually during the 2013 election. There was a dispute. The Supreme Court jumped in, and within a very short period of time, like 14 days, it was resolved conclusively in favor of our government. Now, within that period of time also, the sense that people had was that not only do there are institutions that can help the country manage these challenges, but the Constitution also created a devolved government that enabled the people at the lowest level feel they were a part of this governing system. So what I'm saying is that 2008 was a tragedy, but Kenya learned from it and created, built up new institutions, broadened existing ones to enable us better manage the challenges that arose, that arise, not only from political struggles, but also, other constitutional ones, things which come up, which we may find difficult. So I would tell you now that it would be very unlikely for any violence to occur again around political issues.
So, back to Kenya. I was in Kenya sometime in April 2014, and I couldn't but notice that Kenyans love anything Nigerian.
Yes.
Especially Nollywood.
Absolutely.
Why so? And like you said, you've been a Kenyan ambassador to South Africa. What's the difference between a Kenyan, a Nigerian, and a South African? Why is it that Kenyans love anything Nigerian?
Well, first of all, Nigerians are very warm people. They're very open. Nigerian will never stop himself from telling you what he thinks and believes. So you're very comfortable in the company of Nigeria. You do not hide your emotions. You do not hide your feelings. You do not hide your thoughts. And that enables Kenyans who, because of our natural reserve, we find it very welcoming. I know for a fact that many Kenyans have relationships, both men and women, with Nigerian people. I know for a fact that the personal relationship between President Goodluck Jonathan and President Uhuru Kenyatta is at its best because of the warmth, friendliness, and clear articulation of issues that enable us to be comfortable with each other. And then that is why, even as we speak, the impact of Nollywood in our part of the world is very huge. Why? Because it speaks to our own cultural context. We are very comfortable when we see things happening in Nigerian movies. We can quickly relate to what's happening in our lives because we are African. And I would also say that when we see in the Southern African context, the South African context, when Africans are in movies, we see ourselves in those films. But the Nigerian context is something which I know because of the volume that is pushed out of Nollywood, that is of great cultural value. My own mother is an ardent fan of Nollywood. She follows a woman called Mama G, and when I had the opportunity and honor to meet her last year. And I know when she came to visit Kenya, my mother insisted on going to the airport. This old woman went to the airport, and we told her, don't go. She said, no, I'm going to see Mama G. Of course, she didn't greet her because she was so far away. But she was able to say, I went to see my friend. So there is a passion which, if I was to distill it, I would put it at it's a love relationship with Nigeria. Naturally, we hope that this cultural affinity can be leveraged into solid relations of a cultural level. What I mean is your knowledge of of making films should also be used to help us learn how to make films, learn how to act, and so on. So the collaboration is in train, and as we speak, the Ministry of Tourism of Nigeria is helping our guys sort of get their feet wet in this area. So I would then, of course, your food is very similar. Of course, it's a bit too much spice. It's too hot. Our palates, the Kenyan palate is used to more milder food, very, very exquisite cuisine, and very high sense of fashion, very strong cultural roots. Nigerians know who they are. You can walk anywhere and a Nigerian is there, he stands firm, very confident in his heritage. In fact, I remember once I was at Heathrow and there was a challenge, one individual, and this gentleman, it wasn't his problem, but he immediately jumped into the problem to help resolve it. Why? Because he just thought, no, it cannot be happening. I'm an African, and this fellow African is going through difficulty, and I'm just putting my hand. So he joined in. He happened to be a Nigerian, jumping in to help protect, fight for his fellow African. So I would hope that as the months and the years proceed, that we continue breaking down the barriers of our interaction as Africans between Kenya and Nigeria, and we grow solid together.
So you mentioned tourism. So how profitable is tourism to the Kenyan economy? And when did the government realize the full potentials of tourism to the GDP of the Kenyan economy?
It's always been an important chunk, a huge percentage. It was always our principal foreign exchange earner, and it's always been something we've nurtured. We've tried to build up because the impact of tourism, when you have a tourist come into your country, it has a ripple effect in the economy. Cars have to be driven, people have to be fed, so which means farmers have to grow food. It's a very, very virtuous cycle, tourism, and that is why we've constantly pushed to elevate it. Tourism was our oil, and we've tried to bring it up. Now, of course, as the years have moved on, and we've always tried to put the kind of tourists that come to Kenya of a higher quality, because we don't want our flora and fauna to be trampled. But as the years have moved on with the challenges of Al-Qaeda and terrorism now has become a challenge, and we have found that it has had a negative impact in the numbers of our traditional markets. But we're happy to note that there's a big turnaround. People are coming back to the country. We're also happy that the numbers of Africans visiting us has increased. But we'd like to see more coming from Nigeria. Again, among the challenges is when you talk of security, one has to think of how we can address the security challenges. One also has to think, how do we bring more Nigerians, in particular, or more West Africans to our part of the world? Most of us Africans, when we come to our own countries, we don't bother to look at animals. But that's the way we are. But we want to encourage our people to come and enjoy the wildlife and also the beaches. So tourism is definitely the number one foreign exchange earner. It's had a big blow to it, but we're coming back up. And in fact, 8th to the 10th of October, Magical Kenya has an event in Nairobi to excite the world tourism market to come and understand better our product. Yeah.
So, during your answer, you mentioned terrorism.
Yes.
So, while terrorism seems to be a global irritant, Africa is grappling with our own form of terrorism, as you well know. How has Kenya handled or curtailed the activities of Al-Shabaab?
Well, the number one way of managing people who don't want to tell you they're coming to hit you is you have to have better intelligence, which also means that you have to have better collaboration. These terrorist networks have links with each other. So we have to have better information, timely information. We have to work across borders. We have to work with each other across the continent and internationally. And using those mechanisms of collaboration through the context of the African Union, the United Nations, Interpol, and other agencies, we have to suck the wherewithal of terrorism, which is money. The people who fund the terrorists, we should take their money and throw it away. We should deny them the ability to fund terrorism. Thirdly, I believe strongly that we also need to find a way of denying terrorists the oxygen of publicity, because they thrive on publicizing their efforts. So we should work with our governments to deny them the ability to show off the problems they give us. And I believe strongly that if we deny them the oxygen of publicity, they will crumble. We deny them oxygen of publicity, we reduce the ability to locate funds, and we collaborate better with each other to share the intelligence and to hit them before they hit us.
Quite expose, sir. So basically you're saying Kenya is safe for Nigerian tourists to visit?
Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, I would hope that as months and years go on, that Nigerian tourists, Nigerians should, on a weekend, take a flight, 4.5 hours from Lagos, 4.5 hours from Abuja, direct Kenya Airways to Nairobi. And then from Nairobi, 45 minutes to the Mara, or just relax in the city, or take another 45-minute flight to Mombasa and enjoy the beaches. Nigerians work too hard. They need to rest. What a better place to rest than in Africa, in Kenya. Nigerians run all the time to England. Let them come to Kenya and enjoy our beauty, our flora and fauna.
So, back to the question of East Africa. What's the East African single visa all about?
Well, it's a visa that enables 3 countries, Kenya, Uganda, and Rwanda, to move seamlessly across borders. If you get a visa in one country, you don't need a visa to another. But you have to request for that East African visa. If you request for the regular Kenyan visa, you get the regular one, which entitles you to move with it, to get into Kenya and move within Kenya. But if you get the East African visa, you can go to Uganda and you can go to Rwanda with that one visa. That is working very well.
How much does it cost?
$100. So there's not much of an uptake yet. But that's because it was launched recently and there's not been much publicity around it. But it's going to enable us within the East African region to move within our territories more seamlessly. We hope other countries join us, like Tanzania and Burundi, because if you're able to get a visa in one place and you're able to move within the whole East African region, it's very beneficial to all of us.
So, what business opportunities can Nigerians avail themselves of in Kenya?
Huge, numerous. Number one, oil and gas. We just discovered oil. As we speak, 1/3 of the blocks in the Kenyan oil regime is dedicated to Nigerians.
Oh, really?
Nigerians have expertise in this area. We want to learn from you. We want to learn from your mistakes, as President Jonathan told President Uhuru Kenyatta. We do not want you to make the mistakes we made. So there is a collaboration in place, defined by a memorandum of understanding that enables us to obtain the best practices from you and to learn from you. Secondly, agriculture. We have some of the best. We have best knowledge in managing agriculture. Your Minister for Agriculture, Adeshina, was in Kenya, and we've launched the Kenya-Nigeria Agribusiness Forum, whose focus is to facilitate the movement and the expertise, flow of knowledge and of business in agriculture, tourism, investment, housing, and so on. Huge opportunities. What needs to happen is Nigerians need to get out of Nigeria and go and smell the opportunities, and vice versa. And to facilitate this, those Nigerians who do big business, and when I say big business, I mean not Tom Amolo coming with a Ghana must go back full of human hair, but I mean people come and invest. We'll be able to give them 5-year visas. And we want these groups of people to move seamlessly across our borders to invest in each other's countries. I would encourage Nigerian investment at all levels. We know Nigeria has the ability to put up manufacturing plants, cement factories, Ibeto, Dangote. We would like them to come and invest in our horticultural zones, or for us Kenyans with our expertise to come to Nigeria in plateau, in the places where the weather is, the climate is appropriate to help in growing new varieties of crops or horticulture, flowers and so on. So immense opportunities on both sides, and it's something which has been is being nurtured within the Kenya-Nigeria Business Council, launched in May 2014 by President Uhuru Kenyatta and President Jonathan in State House, Abuja, which enables business communities on both sides to work with each other and diminish, reduce, end the non-tariff barrier issues that clog the works of Nigeria-Kenya business.
Fantastic insights into what is going on. So, a few more questions. So, from my findings, I discovered that a lot of Nigerian students school in Kenya. I wonder why that is so, and if so, how high is the standard of education in Kenya?
Very high. I am a product of Kenyan education, and I can tell you, when I was out there in the rest of the world I can easily say we were among the best. So very high standard of education in Kenya. But also Nigeria is a huge country, and people should not complain that why are Nigerians leaving Nigeria to go to school in other parts of the world. Your numbers dictate that you have to do that, really? because there's so many. Nigeria is 200 million people, so you can get opportunities anywhere. You can go to school here. You can as well go to school within the continent or abroad. I would put it though that going to school in Kenya has other added benefits. First of all, you're interacting in an African country, and you're laying the ground, the foundation of future interaction. So high quality of education. And there's several schools within, at the lowest level to the highest. Braeburn, St. Andrew's, Turi, Peponi, many of them. And they're not only at the lower level, but also universities, and University of Nairobi, Catholic University, Kenyatta University, very good schools. And I have had interaction with Nigerian students in Kenya and here, and I can easily say it's been a very, very useful engagement for them. We intend, hopefully, that we will have an education fair, a Kenya Week, sometime next year, which will bring into one package Kenyan education, Kenyan medical facilities, Kenyan culture, interacting with Nigeria, Kenyan business, so that Nigeria is able to obtain within a concentrated period of time the flavor of the whole Kenyan experience. Yeah.
So, final question. What's the volume of trade between Nigeria and Kenya, and how do you think this can be improved upon?
It is very, very low, and I will refuse to answer it as my president did, because it was so low. We don't trade enough with each other. The kind of trade we have with each other is so minimal. I remember during the launch of the Kenya Business Council, Kenya-Nigeria Business Council, President Uhuru Kenyatta said that it is too low. We do not even want to double it. We want to over triple it within the next year. So that's the biggest challenge. Very low volumes of trade, negligible, and we should do a lot more. We don't even buy oil from Nigeria. We get most of our oil from the Middle East. Nigeria doesn't even buy some of our best agricultural products like milk, like flowers. Because of the challenges of the past, there's so many roadblocks to trading in Nigeria. Kenyan products have some difficulties in getting into Nigeria. There's a whole list of items that we cannot sell to Nigeria. Thankfully, because of the hard work of the Minister for Trade and Industry, Aganga, these are some of the things that are being addressed and managed. And hopefully in weeks to come, some of these barriers to seamless trade will be removed.
So sir, one more time, in what awaits Nigerians in terms of business opportunities in Kenya? Can you list some? What awaits Nigerians?
Oil, gas, agriculture, everything from horticulture,
tourism,
coffee, tea, then tourism, hotel industry, everything from building hotels to owning to visiting. And when you talk about tourism, it is not only the tourism where you see animals, the tourism where you just come and relax. Some of the best hotels on the continent. So tourism, agriculture, mining, real estate, huge opportunities. Unfortunately for us Kenyans, we have some of the most expensive real estate in terms of, if a Nigerian would see where we complain about the high cost, but I know that the returns are huge. The ROI, rate of return on investment in the real estate industry, is among the highest in the world.
Really?
In the world. And luckily, some Nigerian businessmen, investors, have put in a lot of money in purchasing and building real estate in Kenya. So huge opportunities everywhere. And I would recommend very strongly anybody with an interest who wishes to get in touch with me personally through your good offices. I'd encourage them to come to me personally at any level, anytime, and I'll hold their hand as they make contact with Kenya to do whatever kind of business they want.
Sir, Ambassador Amolo, thank you for your time on the interview series.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.